This and That with Me and You is a podcast where we discuss some pretty dark and disturbing things.
I talk about true crimes and cults and a lot of death.
And I talk about the creepier stuff like paranormal, supernatural, and cryptids.
Viewer discretion is advised while listening to us. Warning.
All right, let's get into this. Guess what, babe? It's the big episode 2-0.
Episode 20.
Yeah, we have got ourselves up there a little ways.
A little bit.
Yep.
Just a tiny bit.
So, got any updates?
I mean, not that I can think of.
No? Oh.
I don't know. What do I have to update on, babe?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Everything's kind of just, we're settled into our new schedules of life and kind of just moving forward, doing the best we can. Can't really talk about work stuff. So.
No, that's true. You can't. Well, how's Miss Annie doing? We're on pre-K, so this is a whole different setup.
It's UPK, and
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Same thing as pre-K, but I haven't really heard anything from the school or from her. She doesn't seem to want to talk about it, so.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, the other night when I got to talk to y'all on the phone before bed, it's good, and then wanted to talk about a million other things that didn't make sense, so.
Yeah. Well, she's got her own narrative she's trying to push.
Yeah. No,
I don't want to talk a whole lot about the kids because someday they'll hear this and maybe they won't like what they heard.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
I got nothing on work. I mean, I had a pretty good work week, surprisingly.
Yeah. I had a good week. We were short staffed for most of the week, but again, it's not really something I can talk about, so.
Right.
Can't go into the details of anything, so.
Mm-hmm.
Not really much a point in talking about it at all,
Yeah. Well, in that case, what story you got for us this week?
Today I'm gonna do my best at a story that I have enjoyed since childhood.
Oh yeah.
That fostered a crush for Emilio Estevez for a good part of my preteen to teen years.
Oh boy.
Care to take a guess?
Emilio Estevez. Why does that sound familiar?
We've talked about it before.
Is this the Night Stalker?
No.
No?
That's Neil Diamond Phillips played the Night Stalker in a Hallmark
Yeah,
movie.
okay.
But he was in a movie with Emilio Estevez about this person.
I don't know. You got me. Go ahead.
William Henry McCarty, a.k.a. William H. Bonney, a.k.a. Billy the Kid.
Oh, cool. So Young Guns.
Yes, Emilio Estevez was in Young Guns. Young Guns was my first introductory to Billy the Kid, and yeah, but it was the Brat Pack. Like, they were like the hot guys of the 90s. Like, all the hot guys were in that movie. So obviously, yeah, it got my little preteen angst.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Emilio Estevez the brother
of Charlie Sheen?
Yeah. And they changed their name, and the father changed his name to disassociate.
For some reason, I can't remember their father's name right now off the top of my head. But basically, I think they're half brothers, and Emilio, the father's name is Estevez, but Emilio chose to keep their Latin American heritage by keeping the last name Estevez, where they chose to stay with like the white man name, Sheen. And their father was in that show that I like, Grace and Frankie.
Yeah.
Too. And he was in the movie with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So McCarty was born to parents of Irish Catholic ancestry. Mother, Catherine Devine, her maiden name.
Okay.
And Patrick McCarty, supposedly. So the exact date of his birth is debated, but it is believed by many that he was born November 23rd, 1859 in New York City. However, that was written in a book by Ash Upson, the person who wrote the majority of Pat Garrett's biography. The authentic life of Billy the Kid.
Okay.
That date happens to be Upson's birth date, also.
Ah.
Historians are to this day trying to figure out his exact birth date and place.
Yeah.
November 20th, 1859, and September 17th, 1859 have popped up, but no proof of these being accurate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they didn't have records back then of true births. So.
At the time of Billy's death, it was consistently written in newspapers and books that he was born in New York City.
Okay.
So it is possible that writers of that time knew something we have no proof of today. But there's no evidence to support him being born there, other than his mother arrived in America through New York City from Ireland.
Huh. Okay.
Okay. Due to the testimony of Billy the Kid's childhood friends, it is very possible he was born later than 1859, possibly around 1860 to 1862.
Gotcha.
Childhood friends from Silver City said he was about 12 years old when he lived there in 1873. The co-cousins, friends of his, said that the kid was about 17 years old during the Lincoln County War in early 1878.
Okay.
A Lincoln resident, Lily Casey, stated that the kid was barely 16 when he was jailed in Lincoln in November of 1877. So that doesn't really line up with him being born in 1859.
No, it does not.
This would then make him under the age of 21 when Pat Garrett shot and killed him.
Right.
Which has always been assumed he was 21 when he died. So it is possible that Pat Garrett intended to make him 21 to make it look like he didn't kill a boy in his teens, but a man in his 20s.
That would kind of make sense.
Yes. So he also had a younger brother named Joseph McCarty. Newspapers do say they were half-brothers, but no evidence of that either.
Right.
A theory is that Catherine was first married in New York City to Mr. Bonney.
Okay.
Which there's no proof of that. And then he died or abandoned them. Then she married Michael McCarty, who is the father of Joseph, but Billy took his last name. No evidence of that. It's just a theory.
Okay.
But it makes sense. Okay? Yeah. From the time of birth until 1870, basically there are no records of Billy the Kid.
Right. I know this has come up before. It's a hassle.
All we know is that Catherine McCarty, widow, and her 2 sons arrived in Kansas, accompanied by her longtime boyfriend, William Antrim. It is speculated that at this time, his mother started calling him Henry, so as not to get the 2 of them confused, calling them both William or Bill.
Right.
Because they both went by Bill or Billy. It is speculated that is why people say his birth name was Henry, based upon an account from Chauncey Truesdale, however, a childhood friend from Silver City. William went by Billy, but his mother started calling him by his middle name, Henry. If this theory is true, it would make sense for him to later take the name William H. Bonney.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Because that was his alias later in life.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he still went by the Kid also.
Well, yeah.
While in Kansas, his mother, Catherine, and boyfriend, William Antrim, opened a laundry service and were doing quite well for themselves until a doctor diagnosed her with tuberculosis and told her to seek a warmer and drier climate.
Consumption.
Yes. So Catherine loaded up her boys and, accompanied by her boyfriend, William Antrim, she headed west to Colorado and then south to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And on March 1st, 1873, she married Antrim there in Santa Fe.
Oh, okay.
After the wedding, the family headed south to Silver City and Grant County, New Mexico. The warmer climate there was hoped to benefit Catherine's health, and the mining opportunities would benefit her prospecting husband.
Oh, well, yeah.
In early April, the family arrived in the crowded city and were lucky to find a cabin in the growing city.
Yeah.
Mr. Antrim found work as a carpenter and a butcher, but spent most of his time prospecting and gambling.
Not really a good habit.
Mrs. Antrim took in boarders in the cabin and sold homemade pies and sweet cakes to make ends meet.
Got some Sweeney Todd feelings going there.
Most of the residents and children of Silver City remembered Billy the Kid affectionately and just a little bit mischievous.
Yeah, as all youngins are.
Yeah. As a child, Billy the Kid was described as slender, having small hands, and rather girlish looking. So, because of this stature, he was subject to bullying and teasing a lot.
Well, yeah.
But what he lacked for in size, he made up for in courage and a quick mind.
Okay.
So he was said to be about like 5'9" and 157 pounds.
So taller and skinnier than me. Great. Thanks.
He was known to have a great sense of humor, always laughing and joking, loving music, dancing, and singing. He was also known to be a good student in school and loved reading.
Impressive.
Yeah. Not just childhood friends, but people he met later in life, and even some enemies admitted and agreed that Billy was easygoing, lighthearted, loyal, courteous, and brave almost to the point of recklessness, which is not at all the picture painted of him in pop culture.
No, it's not.
No. But keep in mind, a lot of the picture painted of Billy the Kid is based on Pat Garrett's book.
That's true.
Yes. So unfortunately, Mrs. Antrim's health took a turn for the worse rapidly. And September 16th, 1874, Billy's mother died of consumption.
Right.
Eventually, Mr. Antrim moved to Arizona and left his stepsons to fend for themselves.
That's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. The boys were separated and bounced from one foster home to another. So Billy was somewhat enjoying his newfound freedom without parents. But because he was on his own and he lacked any money to provide for himself, he kind of began a life of crime.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, if he was born in 1859, like Pat Garrett claims, he would have only been 14 or 15 when his mom died. However, if he had been born in 1862, corroborating his believed age from childhood friends, he would have been 12 or 13.
Yeah. But you got to remember, pre-1900s, this wasn't uncommon to have youngins doing their own thing.
A year after his mother died, he was living in Mrs. Brown's boarding house. And to earn money, the young man washed dishes and waited tables at the Star Hotel.
Okay.
He soon befriended a young man named George Schaefer, a.k.a. Sombrero Jack.
Yep.
He was a thief, drunk, and a gambler.
Oh, what a combination.
At this time, Billy the Kid was looking poor in worn-out clothes. Because he was on his own and he was just a kid.
Right.
Sombrero Jack had stolen a bundle of laundry from a Chinese launderer. And since Billy had no decent clothing, he gave the clothes to Billy.
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Brown found the clothes hidden in a trunk in Billy's room, so she turned him into the sheriff.
Oh, no.
But Sombrero Jack had skipped town and left Billy with the blame, basically.
Oh, well, damn.
Sheriff Whitehill, however, was sympathetic to Billy the Kid and had allowed him to run free through the corridors at the courthouse for a limited time while he awaited his hearing before the court.
Okay.
After only 2 days of confinement, Billy escaped up the fireplace in that corridor.
Of course.
And then fled to one of his foster families, the Truesdells.
Okay.
So the Truesdells gave him some money and put him on a stage to Arizona.
Wow.
Yes.
All right.
So like a horse and buggy stage.
Yeah,
situation.
I know, a stagecoach. Yeah. Yes.
So once he arrived in Arizona and found his stepdad, Mr. Antrim, he had told him what had transpired. And Mr. Antrim said, quoted, "If that's the kind of boy you are, get out."
Yeah.
So Billy the Kid was alone and homeless in the Arizona desert now. Possibly only 14 years old, maybe 16 at this time.
Yeah, which is really rough.
Yeah. So he's having trouble finding work because, one, he looked like a child.
Yeah.
And two, he was kind of slender and of small stature.
Mm-hmm.
So wasn't presumed fitting for men's work.
Right.
At this time, he met and went into partnership with a man named John Mackey. And the duo began a career of stealing saddles and horses, particularly from the army in the Camp Grant area.
Okay.
They were eventually caught and thrown into jail at Camp Grant, but the kid escaped and fled.
I do remember him being a pretty damn good escape artist.
It's because he was tiny.
Oh, yeah.
Because he squeezed through small spaces.
Yeah.
Yes. A few months later, though, he turned up again in the area, which would be part of his downfall.
Well, yeah.
You see, Billy had a bully at Camp Grant, a man named Frank Windy Cahill, a husky blacksmith. He
Oh.
took pleasure in tormenting Billy every chance he got. Gus Gildia, a ranch hand, recalled that shortly after the kid came to Fort Grant in the first place, Windy started abusing him. He would throw Billy to the floor, ruffle his hair, slap his face, and humiliate him before the men in the saloon. On August 18th, 1877, the kid had a run-in with his bully at Atkins Cantina. Cahill called the kid a pimp, and the kid returned the insult by calling him a son of a bitch.
Those aren't quite on the same level there, or
Yeah.
at least not in modern terminology.
Cahill then plowed into him and wrestled him to the ground, sat on him, pinned his arms down with his knees, and slapped him in the face.
Wow.
So Billy wiggled his right arm free and managed to grasp his .45, and then he shot him fatally in the stomach.
And so it begins.
Yeah, the kid wiggled himself free, bolted out the door, mounted the nearest horse, and got the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
As it turns out, the kid rode off on a prized racehorse.
Oh,
But when he found another, he sent the valuable animal back to its rightful owner.
nice.
Despite previous abuse and Calhill being much larger and getting the upper hand, the shooting was deemed unjustifiable.
Yep.
Now with a murder charge hanging over his head, Billy the Kid hightailed it back to New Mexico.
Okay.
Once again, alone, still a child, vulnerable, he headed to Donna Ana County near La Mesilla, where he joined one of the most notorious gangs of rustlers and killers in the Southwest. Their leader was Jesse Evans, and they called themselves the Boys.
Okay.
Although Jesse Evans was captain of the gang, it was John Kinney, also known as King of the Rustlers, who coordinated the gang's rustling activities.
Okay.
The stolen cattle and horses were sold to those who didn't ask questions, and no one was willing to risk their lives to stop the rustlers, including the law.
Yeah, I do remember a story or two about that.
Except for Colonel Albert Fountain, who at the time was the editor of the Mesilla Valley Independent. He was not only exploiting them in his paper, but also putting pressure on the law to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, the law finally started cracking down on them. So the gang moved towards Lincoln County, about 150 miles northeast of Donna Ana County.
Okay.
Okay, so basically the Lincoln County War was something that had been built up over time from many feuds since the late 1860s.
Right.
But the bitter feud between Englishman John Tunstall against Irishman James Dolan was the most notorious and caused the most bloodshed.
Oh.
Both Dolan and Tunstall had one main objective: to form a monopoly in Lincoln County on the cattle and trade market.
Okay.
Okay? But the Murphy and Dolan Company had already been established as an enterprise, and they had the Santa Fe Ring, the county sheriff backing them, and now the Boys have also decided to back them.
Gotcha.
Okay. So Murphy of Murphy Dolan was actually dying of cancer at this time, and it was his predecessor, James Dolan, that was the brains behind everything.
Okay.
The native of Ireland, Dolan was a feisty young businessman who wouldn't tolerate things not going his way, and most would not dare to challenge him, except for one man, John Tunstall.
Okay.
A young, rich English businessman came to Lincoln County with a get-rich-quick business scheme and believed he had the sophistication and brains to outwit these Westerners. There we go. I said it. So with his daddy's money and taking on an attorney, Alex McSween, as a partner, Tunstall started his own ranch and opened up a town store, and quickly became a thorn in Dolan's side.
I bet he did.
Yes. Tunstall knew he was stirring the pot. He hired gunmen as ranch employees, so he was expecting trouble.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But he believed the law would protect him. And he, however, found out too late that Dolan and the Santa Fe Ring were the law in Lincoln County.
Yep. Something about them small western towns that
Yeah.
the law had its own handle.
Yes. So Dolan was already having financial problems. The Murphy and Dolan Company was facing bankruptcy when Tunstall came into town.
Oh.
Then Tunstall gained support from the locals and from the cattle baron John Chisholm. So Tunstall was becoming a huge threat to his already crumbling empire.
Yeah.
So Dolan decides to lash out on Tunstall by getting his partner, McSween, arrested on phony embezzlement charges and having the boys steal horses from Tunstall's ranch.
Well, shit.
Yes. Then Tunstall struck back by exploiting Sheriff Brady for defaulting on tax collecting in the editorial of The Independent.
Cute.
Yes. So meanwhile, the boys are getting sick and tired of this kid hanging around, particularly Bill Morton, who liked to bully him, Billy the Kid.
Yeah.
And kicked him out of camp one evening, claiming the kid was getting too comfortable with his girl.
Okay.
So the kid was also getting tired of the gang and had started to make friends with people in town. In particular, he became friends with the Jones family and the two cousins, Frank and George Coe, the ones that said that he would have been about 17 at this time.
Yeah.
So Billy was bouncing back and forth from hanging out with the gang and the Jones family and the Coe cousins.
Right.
Until he was arrested and charged with the theft of Tunstall's horses. Which, the gang made him the fall guy on that.
Oh, of course.
Like, he was thrown into the town jail, which was nothing more than a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
So, John Tunstall knew the kid was a member of Evan's gang. But he decided to meet with him in jail. And instead of pressing charges against him, he offered him a job.
Well, that's a twist.
Yeah. It was most likely out of pity and so he could use him as a witness against the rustlers.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. The kid knew he was no longer welcome with the gang and really didn't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
At this time, he would have been 17, maybe 16. Depends on what his actual birth date is.
Right.
He decided to make this his new beginning and started calling himself William H. Bonney at this point. So the kid fit in really well with his new group of friends at the ranch and became, from all accounts, a town favorite with everyone that met him. He was really popular with the young Mexican girls in town and known to be a charmer and just an all-around fun guy to be around.
Yeah, I mean, from what I do know of it, he had a pretty damn good reputation.
Yeah. So Dolan, well, that's not really how he's depicted in a lot of movies and stuff these days. Or any of the movies and books ever written about him. He's always depicted as being short and fat, and they say he has a really short temper.
I don't know about the short and fat part, but yeah. The short temper, yes, but...
Anyway, Dolan was getting frustrated. He was doing everything he could to get rid of John Tunstall, from bad-mouthing him around town, threatening him, even pointing a gun in his face, rustling his livestock, and he had the sheriff levy his property for McSween's phony embezzlement debts.
Wow.
And he was just released from jail on bond. But nothing was driving the stubborn Englishman away.
Yeah.
So on February 18th, 1878, Sheriff Brady sent Deputy Bill Matthews and a posse to Tunstall's ranch to attach the cattle in the embezzlement case against McSween. So that was his next move, was to take the cattle. Gotcha. So Tunstall was going to allow them to take the cattle without resistance, but not his horses.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Tunstall and a handful of his men herded the horses to Lincoln.
Okay.
Upon arriving to Tunstall's ranch, Deputy Matthews formed a sub-posse led by Bill Morton to go after Tunstall and the horses.
Uh-huh.
Among that sub-posse was Jesse Evans, Tom Hill, Frank Baker, and George Hindman. So half the men who rode with this posse, headed by the sheriff and deputy, were members of a gang and were wanted outlaws. Uh-huh. These are all members of the boys.
Oh, yeah.
So, in the afternoon, the Tunstall group were riding towards a canyon. The kid and John Middleton rode drag about 300 yards behind, pushing the horses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tunstall, Brewer, and Rob Whitteman led the way.
Okay.
Okay. A flock of wild turkeys caught the attention of Brewer and Whitteman. Pulling out their rifles, they went after the turkeys and they left Tunstall alone.
Okay.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just like, that's probably not a smart idea.
Yeah. Suddenly, the kid saw the posse coming in fast.
Yeah.
So Billy spurred his horse forward to warn Brewer and Whitteman. Middleton rode towards Tunstall and yelled out, "For God's sake, follow me," as he and the others all headed for cover behind some rocks.
Okay.
The posse outlaws caught up with John Tunstall and shot him down in cold blood.
Wow.
Tunstall's last words were, "What, John? What?"
That'll do it.
The following day, Brewer and the kid swore out affidavits to Justice of the Peace J. Wilson, and he quickly issued warrants for the assassin's arrest.
Oh, well, that's good.
Constable Martinez deputized the kid and Fred Waite to aid him in serving the warrants.
Interesting.
So the men were at Dolan's store. The constable and the kid and this Fred Waite walked into the Dolan store to serve the warrants.
Okay.
Sheriff Brady was present and refused to let them arrest his men.
Gotcha.
Instead, he took the constable and his two deputies prisoner.
Okay.
Okay. The men confiscated their weapons, including a Winchester rifle Tunstall had given the kid prior to his death.
Mm-hmm.
After a couple hours of basically torturing them, from what I read,
yeah,
they only let Constable Martinez go. And they freed the kid and Fred Waite 2 days later. And the kid and Fred Waite actually missed Tunstall's funeral as a result of that.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Right? So Justice of the Peace J. Wilson then deputized Brewer, who formed his own posse called the Regulators.
I've heard of them.
Okay. Once one of the first members recruited was the kid.
Yeah.
Frustrated by Sheriff Brady's interference and Governor Axtell turning a blind eye on what was going on in Lincoln, the Regulators were unable to do things the law way.
Of course.
And had no choice but to fight fire with fire.
Yep. It wasn't called the Wild Wild West for nothing.
Yeah. So first the Regulators tracked down Bill Morton and Frank Baker and killed them, possibly execution style.
Yeah.
They also killed William McCloskey during the shooting, who was a friend of Bill and Frank's and may have been a spy.
Okay.
The 6 Regulators, including the kid, then ambushed and killed Sheriff Brady and his deputy Bill Matthews.
Oof.
The kid would later admit to accidentally killing Mrs. McSween while aiming for Deputy Bill Matthews in this interaction.
Ouch. That can't be good.
Yeah. The kid felt that Bill Matthews was responsible for Tunstall's death by sending the sub-posse after them. The sub-posse full of murderous thugs. So he think he had intended on it resulting in a murder.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that.
Yeah. So when the kid went out to the street to reclaim his rifle from the dead Sheriff Brady's corpse, Matthews fired his rifle at the kid, but the bullet only clipped him on the hip, which I imagine still hurts a good bit, but at least I've heard.
Any kind of graze hurts.
Yeah. Soon after this, the Regulators went after Dolan's gunman. Another one of Dolan's gunmen, Buckshot Roberts.
That's a name.
Yeah, but not before he killed Dick Brewer and wounded 2 others. And the kid was grazed in the arm by a bullet during this, too.
Another graze. I mean, he's lucky, but
yeah,
it still sucks.
Although Charlie Bowdry gave Roberts his fatal gunshot wound, the kid would be blamed for this death.
Yeah.
Now the kid and several Regulators, along with Alex McSween, are hiding out in the McSween home in Lincoln.
Okay.
Dumb as fuck. They're in the town that they just killed a bunch of people in.
Well,
anyway, not too long after that, they find themselves trapped and surrounded by Dolan's men, Colonel Dudley, and basically the Fort Stanton army.
Well, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah. And after a 5-day siege in the home, the house was set on fire. Alex McSween and the men all start to panic, basically, because they're still in the house.
Yeah. And, everything's made of, like, very flammable wood. So.
Yeah. Up until this point, the kid was just a member of the group.
Right.
And this is where he decides to take charge.
Okay.
The plan was that he and 4 others would break out the back door and run towards Tunstall's store. Okay. Through a gate on the east side of the yard, drawing the line of fire towards them, while McSween and the others would run to the rear wall through a back gate and lose anyone following them in the dark and go to the river.
Okay, makes sense.
So it was about 9 p.m. when they made their move. The kid would recall that the flames of the fire made it almost as light as day for a short distance.
Damn.
Yeah. The kid led the group towards the Tunstall store, but was met with gunfire coming from the store. So they made a quick dash towards the river to meet the others.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, McSween and his group ran for their lives toward the back gate and were also met with heavy gunfire.
Oh, shit.
It was just a hot mess of guns blazing from all over, men falling dead or wounded. When the smoke cleared, the war was over.
See, that's a thing about an ambush, essentially, is that you literally cover all exits. And they did.
Yeah. So, McSween and 4 other members of the Regulators were dead. And on the Dolan side, they lost 1 man named Robert Beckwith. His death was pinned on the kid, even though he was nowhere near the kid at the time of his death and actually was fleeing in the opposite direction. Following the escape, kind of sort of the aftermath of the siege, I guess, following this event,
okay,
the victors got drunk and looted Tunstall's store. And actually, the Irishman ends up owning Tunstall's store after all is said and done.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, following that, all of that, they, the Regulators, well, the kid and the surviving Regulators slipped away into the darkness.
Okay.
And the kid had hoped for a brighter future when he got hired on by Tunstall, but now he would become the fall man for the Lincoln County War, basically. Yeah. The kid would be the only one punished, and from here on out would be a wanted man.
Yep.
And I'm so sorry, you're gonna hate me. Or like 2 listeners who pretty much sure is just us listening to the podcast are going to hate me, but come back next week for part 2.
What?
Of Billy the Kid?
No, that's not where you stopped this story. No, no.
I had to. It was just too long.
No, I
to do that, it in 1 week.
Come on, like that was the. I was waiting on the whole like legend of how he escaped jail.
I mean, you got some stories about how he escaped jail the first 2 times.
No, there's this really famous one, whether he actually killed someone or not. I'm
gonna get into it next week. Don't ruin the story.
God, come on.
Everything from this story I got from aboutbillythekid.com.
Yeah.
Which is a website that has collected data from many books, eyewitness accounts, and newspapers all into one website. And it's really good, and it references all of its information as well. It was really a wealth of knowledge on the subject.
Okay.
And I will finish the story next week, and it'll be longer next week too, because I got a lot more to cover.
Well, I hope mine's shorter next week. Good grief. All right. Jesus. Okay. I really don't like part 1, part 2 of podcast things, but I guess it makes sense.
It's a very long story, so.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Billy the Kid is definitely a very long story. I mean, to be fair, I've thought about doing that with a creepypasta, because there's this really fascinating one that, since Mortal Kombat's new video game just came out, I was like, it'd be the perfect time to do it, but so I gotta wait. I literally have to wait another week, just like the audience does, to find this out. Just Just saying. Because I know some of the story, not all of it.
I love you.
Love you too.
So what do you got?
I got a fact for you. Actually, a couple of them.
Okay.
So, since this episode airs on the 2nd of October,
Ooh.
Yeah, we are moving on up and just a few weeks away
From our wedding.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, we might take a little hiatus because trying to keep up with the podcast and prepare for everything is getting a little tight.
Yeah.
So we might take a break. Anyway, on the 2nd of October in 1965, scientists created Gatorade in aid of the Florida Gators, for those who don't know that.
I knew that.
But you know what a national holiday it is?
What?
Name Your Car Day.
Oh.
Yeah. Do you remember what Annie named our pickup?
I don't remember.
Black Elvis. It was the funniest thing ever. I remember that. We had this whole conversation about naming cars and stuff like that because we had gotten Annie one of those ride-on cars, and she wanted to name it. And we were like, oh, well, what do you want to name the truck? And she's like, well, Mommy loves Elvis, and the truck's black, so he's Black Elvis. And I'm like, okay. It was a time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. In 1984, though, on the 2nd of October, 3 Russian cosmonauts returned to the Earth after 237 days in orbit.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know what? Speaking of space, there's a pretty interesting theory about the moon that has some evidence backing it up.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
We already did the moon landing, so what do you...
Yeah. I got another moon conspiracy for you.
Okay.
Yep. Did you know that the moon actually rings like a bell when it's impacted?
No.
Mm-hmm. Though the moon has been with the Earth seemingly forever, to this date, scientists still argue over explaining why the moon is the moon, because we can't figure out how it was formed. We don't know why it orbits the way it does. The distance between the moon and the Earth, like, none of this correlates to any other planet in the entirety of the solar system and possibly the universe. Because the more that scientists have looked through all this and done their research and done their studies, stuff does not add up.
Okay.
Yeah. But there is one theory that pretty much answers all of these questions. Like, literally, how was it formed, the orbit, the distance, the composition of the moon. And in school, we've been taught basically the moon has been here as long as the Earth has, right?
Yeah, and every planet has moons and stuff.
Yeah, well, not every planet, but most.
A lot of planets have moons.
Well, scientists can't agree with how it actually came to become our moon. There's one theory, which is the capture theory. Basically, the moon got too close and stuck with us.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another one called accretion theory, which is basically the moon and the Earth were created at the exact same time during the Big Bang and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
However, that would mean that the moon and the Earth would have very similar traits. Like, our minerals, our composition of how it's made, like an iron core for one. This isn't the case at all.
Okay.
There's also this theory called the fission hypothesis. Basically, at the creation of the Earth, the Earth was spinning so fast, and something meteorite, or like a meteor or whatever, basically the size of a planet, hit Earth, and it threw all this chunks of Earth into outer space, and because they were spinning so fast, it spun a moon.
Okay.
It's interesting, but still kind of unlikely because the moon rocks that we brought back from believing that we actually went to the moon, okay, take that into account. You have to just give in for just this episode. If you were to believe the studies that we made on the moon rocks that we apparently brought back, the rocks are older on the moon than the deepest parts of the ocean, which is basically like our deepest parts of the Earth's crust, you know?
Right.
So that's a no. That can't be the case.
Speaking of deep parts of the ocean, did you see that weird deep sea creature that it's like we already have some of them, but they found a new species recently in
Okay.
deep sea? Oh my god, let me look it up so I can show you. Feather star. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not.
They're fucking scary looking.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that's what that's called, but yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah, they found a new species. I'd never seen anything like that. That's fucking scary looking.
It's like a type of jellyfish ish.
Yeah. I
Okay.
believe so. I believe you're right.
Interesting. See, still finding shit today. Why are we studying the stars when we haven't even figured out our own damn planet yet?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, moving forward.
Wait a minute. You don't believe in studying the stars, too?
I do, but I feel like we shouldn't be looking for a new planet for us to live on.
Yeah, I
if
agree
we
with
haven't
that.
figured out what the fuck's on ours.
Yeah.
They
still haven't found Nessie, man. They're getting close, though.
No, there was a very recent update.
You gotta do an update next episode, so work on that this week.
Well, no, it wasn't even anything big. It was just that there had been sounds recorded in the Loch Ness, and biologists and scientists and stuff like that are like, we have no idea what creates that sound, and all the locals are like, duh, we do.
Nessie.
Yeah, it's Nessie. So there's, it's getting interesting. And, with the weird shit that's going on all around the world, Nessie just popping her head up and being like, yo, dude, I've been real for like millennia now, wouldn't shock me at all.
Same.
Anyway, another theory about how the moon came to be, though, is the giant impact, which is kind of the same thing as the fission hypothesis, where it got hit while it was spinning so damn fast. However, this is that it wasn't spinning that fast; it was just already here, and an asteroid the size of freaking Mars collides with the planet Earth, basically splits Earth into two, and creates a second miniature Earth, aka the moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they said the moon is older than Earth.
Right. So there's more problems with
it. I don't know. I think I kind of feel like I have always believed in the Big Bang Theory. There's enough evidence to support that evolution as well. So it probably ties into that. Or the first theory of it basically getting too close to the Earth and being sucked into our atmosphere, and now it's just stuck there.
Well, I think you're going to be interested in this one.
Okay.
Because this theory it answers all the questions if it were to be truly the case.
Okay.
Okay. There is several other theories out there, but they either get really far-fetched or they're just have too many issues to be the correct answer.
Okay.
Okay. But studying rock samples from the moon,
allegedly,
this study basically only created more questions than answers.
Okay.
Because they're like, wait a minute, minerals don't add up. This doesn't add up. I don't know. It's a thing.
Okay.
But Dr. Robert Brett of NASA, quote, says, it seems much easier to explain the non-existence of our moon than its existence, end quote.
Okay.
Now, like I said, for me to really get into this theory, you have to believe that we did go to the moon, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. The samples that were brought back from the moon are strange, to say the least. Because the top layer, like we were just talking about, the top layer of the moon is older than the lower layers. The only way this happens on Earth is if we dig.
Right.
So like if you were think like a mining explosion where they blast out particles of the mine so they can get lower, that's the only way that older pieces of dirt wind up on top instead of
Right.
on the bottom.
Right.
That's not the case on the moon. It is literally old shit's on top, new shit's on the bottom.
So it's growing from the inside?
I don't know. Denser material for Earth is typically found towards the center.
Right.
It's how gravity works. You know, the closer you get to the center of mass, the heavier that gravity is going to be.
Yeah.
Okay? Not in the case of the moon. Our moon has the opposite effect.
Yeah, you bounce there.
Well, no, that's just a matter of gravity.
Oh.
Of
no gravity?
Less gravity.
Less gravity.
It's like 1/6 of our gravity on the moon. But what I mean by this is like, okay, think of a marble. Okay, you're looking at the outside of a marble and you can see through this marble, right? The inside has a core. It's a really solid, thick core. Okay, the moon, if you were to look at the moon's marble, it's got a thick outer shell and a not so sturdy center.
Okay.
So it's opposite of us, and it doesn't make sense.
So it's crumbling it's dying from the center as well?
Not dying. Let me get into the theory. So
okay,
because I did say it's called the moon is hollow theory. The impact craters on the moon are another anomaly that are really mysterious.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how big they are, they're all exactly the same depth. They stop at exactly the same, so many meters down.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm. And the age of the moon's samples and stuff like that I've done, like I said, it's
older than Earth.
It's older than Earth. But it's not just older, it's much older.
Are they carbon dating it?
Kind of, yeah. So basically, like if they were to estimate that the Earth is about 4 billion years old,
mm-hmm.
They're saying that the moon is like 8 billion years old. So it's
they're estimating that.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're estimating. Everything's an estimate because we don't know.
Because I mean, they're still finding old pieces. Like they're finding contradictory evidence.
Yeah,
the pyramids.
Yeah,
of how old the Earth is actually, and how old they thought the pyramids were.
Yeah, well, when I do my Nikola Tesla episode, let me tell you, there's going to be some shit about the pyramids in there.
Okay.
That has evidence, and it's mind blowing.
You should do like the pyramids sometime on their own.
There's just too much to do about the pyramids, let me tell you. Anyway,
maybe one theory about them.
Well, I'm going to do one for Nikola Tesla's episode. Like I said, the moon's much older than the Earth. It's kind of weird. But here's the interesting thing. Some scientists are speculating that the moon might actually be as old as the beginning of the universe. Which our Earth is not.
Yes.
So that would throw some kinks into the theory there. Some other theories. Now, we find common minerals, okay, like certain metals and stuff like that are found on Earth, found on the moon. That's normal throughout space. However, there are 2 radioactive materials that are found naturally on the moon. We can't find them on Earth without creating them in a lab.
Okay.
That's uranium-236 and neptunium-237. We have to create them
in a lab.
In a lab. We can't just find them naturally. Not unless we go to the moon. They're just up there. And this can be tested with drones and bots. What part of the moon
is like the crystally shiny part?
Is
that just bullshit? Like you can get moon rocks at like gift shops. And
it's they're made of glass. Some pieces are glass.
Crystally and shiny.
Yeah, some of the moon's surface is a glass cluster, like think quartz. It's shiny rock.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like black, but it's also shiny.
Okay.
Like these rocks. They're like black, but they're.
That's obsidian?
No, it's not obsidian.
Oh.
It's like glitter. It looks like it's a black stone covered in glitter, basically.
Oh, I got no idea, babe. Because people come up with some weird shit and make their
Okay.
own. So I don't know. Speaking of those minerals, though, there are very rare metals on Earth that we find absolutely abundant on the moon.
Okay.
Now, if you were to go with this theory, this would kind of make sense because these metals are the strongest metals here on Earth, like titanium, stuff like that,
Yeah.
which are very expensive metals, but they're also the strongest.
Yes.
If it's a spaceship and, the depth of the craters thing, super strong metal right there just below the surface, it would kind of make sense. I'm telling you, like, the more I got into this, the more I was like,
The moon is a spaceship.
the moon is a hollow spaceship. This is okay.
And it's stuck in the Earth's orbit.
Not Don't think about it that way. With all the alien shit coming up, what if it's like a transmitting, like, alien sent here to freaking monitor us?
Yeah, they're transmitting us like a TV show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Futurama actually does that, but it's not like that they're watching Earth. They're watching Earth cable TV, but because it takes so long for the transmission to go through, they're like 1,000 years behind
Oh
on
God.
TV, and they're like in the 1990s as far as TV goes. They're watching shows from that
Oh man.
time. Yeah, it's funny.
NASA decided to test this theory of whether the moon was hollow or not.
Okay.
You know how in the beginning I said the moon rings like a bell?
Uh huh.
So during the Apollo 12 mission, they dropped the lunar space module onto the moon just to see what happened.
Okay.
Okay, they had left seismic technology on the moon, which is same shit that we use for earthquakes, and it transmitted back to the shuttle, which transmitted back to Earth, so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
When they dropped this lunar space module, it rang
Like a bell.
like a bell for more than an hour.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. During the Apollo 13 mission, they used a bigger and heavier object to see what would happen. 3 hours. It rang like a bell.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Why would it ring for so long?
It's hollow. It's metal. It would make sense.
For it to ring that long?
I mean, think about the size of the moon. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Which, here's the weird
It's smaller than Earth, though, right? Like you
Yeah.
did say that earlier.
Yeah, it is smaller than Earth. But here's a weird thing. Speaking of ringing like a bell, did you know we've been ringing bells wrong for a hot minute now?
Okay, how are we supposed to ring a bell?
So if you look up old pictures of like when bells are first becoming popular, they have a hammer. They have this little dingy hammer, and you just hold it and tap the bell instead of using the clanker on the bottom.
Huh.
Which would make sense if that's truly the case of the Liberty Bell. That would make sense how it cracked. Just saying. I don't know.
I don't think that's what happened. I think it was struck by lightning.
I don't know. I was saying it was funny. Anyway, back to this ringing for 3 hours. So they were able to like do all these different scientific equations, find out how far it's going, and doing this, that, and the other. The vibrations that you can measure them just like we do on Earth. You can measure how far it travels and stuff like that. That's how you triangulate an earthquake origin. Well, it only goes down 20 miles. That's not possible on Earth because of our density. Basically the way that it goes down is that the more dense the object, the less it's going to vibrate.
Right.
And it makes it slow down a lot faster. On the moon, it actually sped up to head towards the center, which would mean that it's hollow or very less dense the further you go in.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least it's got like hollow patches. And if the moon is hollow, if the moon is hollow or has hollow spaces in it, that would be exactly what it does. So another point for the moon's a hollow spaceship. And also, you were just asking about the size of the moon. The moon is much more like a planet than it is a moon. It's 1/4 the size of Earth. which does not occur anywhere else, however far we can measure this is so far.
Okay.
Okay. And it has a very strange orbit because in comparison to other moons. Because it's closer than it should be in comparison to any other planet that we can observe. And it has a near perfect circle around the Earth. It stays basically the same distance all the way around. That's never the case. We, as the Earth around the sun, don't orbit like that. We have an elliptical orbit. This is because of this orbit and this size, perfect distance, perfect size, allows for the eclipses. Which, here's the weird thing. Modern measurements have shown that the moon is actually moving away from us a little ways. Like, it's steadily getting further and further out. There's records, like written down record from ancient civilizations, that the moon perfectly eclipsed, which it doesn't now. That's why you get the fiery ring around the moon. It's not a perfect eclipse anymore. Another strange anomaly of moon material is that the moon itself is not magnetic. When moon rocks were brought back to the Earth, they were significantly magnetic.
Okay.
Yeah. The Soviets wound up actually looking at the coincidences and the oddities, and I know this kind of sounds strange, but they're the ones that brought up that, hey, it's a hollow spaceship. That would be the only thing that makes sense.
You know, wouldn't it just be nice if we could all get along and combine our information together?
It would be fucking nice.
And, you know, don't you think we would all just know a lot more things?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that we're all stuck in our bullshit past generational curse drama. To move past that and become one planet.
As long as humans have been upon the Earth.
Religion.
No, humans. There's always been a power struggle.
Yeah, and it always involves religion.
Because think about it, even in caveman, one small group of cavemen tried to outpower another group of cavemen to take over that area, a hunting ground, whatever. Survival of the fittest, essentially.
Yeah.
It's always been a thing.
It's getting old, though.
It is.
Isn't it? Do our listeners, all three of you, agree at all?
Leave a comment.
Right? Let us know.
Yeah.
We'll really know if you were listening then, because we're like an hour in.
Yeah. And you, like, those that actually do listen to us wind up texting me, so there's that.
You mean your friend?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
If the moon is actually a spaceship that is hollow, the question is, who created it? Who sent it to us?
Aliens.
Yeah. Believe it or not.
What about Stonehenge?
Well, there is connectivity to all that stuff. But all ancient civilizations have stories about the moon.
Yeah.
And a time before the moon.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. The Romans and Greek during like the 5th century BC, Phosophilus. So
we've probably talked about it before.
Phossolines.
No,
that guy.
You lost me halfway through spelling it. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know.
Philosophiles?
That
the creator of philosophy? I don't know.
I feel like that was a little bit further than what I said. Anyway, whoever that guy was talks about the Arcadians in the time before the moon. In Bolivia, they talk about the Tiwunaka, also a time before the moon. They talk about the moon arriving around 11,500 to 13,000 years ago, which is about the same time as the Great Flood. In almost every religion ever, there's a Great Flood.
Yes, so that did happen. We're pretty sure. at this point.
Well, we actually have proof of it. It's
Yeah.
called the Younger Dryas.
Yeah. And they found proof of it at the pyramids too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's called the Younger Dryas, or maybe the Younger Dry Ass. But and like I said, every culture, every religion, everyone has a great flood story and a creation story. The Zulu legends actually talk about how the moon is hollow.
Huh.
And it's inhabited by lizard people.
Oh.
That's a
the Zulus. Thing. Who are they?
I couldn't give you an exact answer on that one.
It.
But the Zulu legend says that the moon was put into orbit by two brothers, and the Sumerians also believe this. And they call them
South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an African thing. Yeah.
Anyway, you were saying?
The Zulu legend says that the moon was put into orbit by two brothers, which is the Sumerian belief too. They call these people the Anunnaki. Have you ever heard of the Anunnaki?
It sounds familiar.
Super powerful, ancient, mysterious, magical people is the shorthand.
Okay. Are they also the lizard people?
No. These are basically gods among men.
Okay.
Or, the creators of everything in every story. If you really want to go with it, Ancient Aliens kind of throws this out there because the Anunnaki basically seem like the extraterrestrial gods that created mankind in almost every story because of how they are presented in all these stories.
In the Zulu stories?
In more than just Zulu legends.
In African legends mostly?
I
like
mean,
the Anunnaki is just like from that
Greek, Roman.
But they didn't call them Anunnaki, right?
Yeah, they did.
Oh.
Plato calls about the Anunnaki.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In his story about Atlantis, actually, because Atlantis is supposedly the battle of two godly people, the Anunnaki, and I'm gonna have to get back to you on the second one. When I do a lot more research on the Anunnaki, I'm going to have you sitting right beside me because this is the most fascinating thing I've ever seen.
Okay.
Anyway, the Anunnaki are definitely, per legend, before the moon. And all of the Zulu legends and, all these other background legends, they talk about the time before the moon.
Okay.
There was no seasons, which, interestingly enough, the moon is what creates our seasons.
Huh. I know the moon has to do with, like, the tides, too.
Yep. These legends also state that before the moon arrived, there was a thick fog, like a very moist, dense fog. I just said moist. Anyway, that completely covered the planet. Without the moon, there wasn't any seasons, there was no climate, there was no tides, and there was extreme weather. Okay. Which
makes sense.
It does add up because the moon influences all of that. We have climates because of the moon. We have seasons because of the moon. You just said it. Tides are controlled by the moon. Our weather is more or less controlled by the moon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now,
all I remember about learning about weather is condensation and how that works. For some reason, that really drilled into my head. But as far as weather goes, I don't know shit else.
I think for most people, the condensation thing, the reason why it sticks is because you experience it every single day of your life.
No, I mean about the cycle of water.
I know.
And how it goes up into the clouds and then from our lakes and then goes back down into our lakes. Like, it's just a cycle. Yeah, that. I remember that.
Well, when you said condensation, I was like, literally everyone experiences it every single day. Because if you have a cold drink and it's hot outside, there's condensation.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Is that condensation also?
It's condensing the water vapor to water. Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, am I calling it the right thing?
Oh, the water cycle?
That what is it called?
Well, condensation is one step because you have vaporization, you have condensation,
Yeah.
you have.
I don't remember. It's a whole diagram where
Yes,
it's like a circle of water going from the lakes up into the clouds and
yes,
through.
because when
Yeah.
it gets cold, it condenses and then it creates rain, which is um, I forget the term.
Where does the moon come in on that?
It controls it. The movement of
The clouds.
clouds and all that other stuff. A lot more sciencey than I've ever studied because I don't do climate study stuff. Of all things that I'm really interested in, that's not it. But I might get into it after this.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway,
you know what? If you get into climate studies, we might not be arguing anymore about some things.
no, listen, I have listened to some very fascinating sciencey people. Climate change is very, very, very minute, and it is very natural. We are literally coming out of an ice age, and people refuse to listen to that. Anyway, moving forward.
I'm not going to argue with you right now because I'm not as smart as you, so I won't come back with like fact-based points. I'll just come back with
stuff that you've seen.
Yeah, bullshit. So, but I believe that it is proven otherwise, and that's the problem with science. Is it all is considered
So the
theory.
greenhouse effect is a real thing. Yes, absolutely. However, the evaporation of the ozone, not quite true. Not quite true. We have lost a minimal layer, but it's not significant enough to do anything. Greenhouse effect, it's actually natural. It occurs naturally after every ice age. So, anyway, back to this. I gotta talk about the moon.
Allegedly.
According to the Zulu legends, after the moon appears, there's a great flood. And it creates the tides and it creates seasons, which, believe it or not, science has just figured this out in like the last 100 years ish. We just figured out that the moon did this. I mean, to us as adults, 100 years sounds like a lot, but in the span of time, considering that the Zulu people were BC, before our calendar years, that's a big deal.
You mean the Arcanian or whatever?
No, I'm talking about the Zulu legend.
Okay, the Zulu legend.
Where all this information comes from. This part of the information comes from. They are significantly older than that. They are part of the ancient civilizations around the same time as Mayans and Aztecs and stuff like that. Those people had already known that the moon controlled our seasons, controlled our weather, controlled our tides, and our smarty pants just figured it out like 100 years ago.
Yeah, well, you have to think that we were kind of uncivilized until a
well,
point
it's not that
when
we weren't.
Decide, like, I don't know, we just something happened after the fall of Rome and Greece.
Listen,
that
there's
just where we had the Dark Ages and like.
Can I throw another conspiracy theory at
and
you?
all of that happened, and then we started to become society again at some point.
Yeah.
And like,
I'm gonna throw another conspiracy theory at you. We're missing years.
Yeah.
Like 300 years of time throughout history. It's just a kind of a blank spot.
Yeah.
And it's been made up by the Pope. An alteration of the timeline.
Okay.
There's a little minute like debunking to it.
So it was like, I don't know. I'm not good at timelines. Hear me out. It was like the Mayans and all that shit, and the Romans and all that shit, and then they started recording time basically somewhere. Jesus, and then it was after the fall of Rome and Greece and all that. It was the Dark Ages, right?
I believe there was a English takeover in there between the two.
Yeah. Well, the English took over, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that involved the fall of
Rome and Greece. You're not entirely wrong. There's just a weird overlap in there somewhere that.
Yeah. And then it's the Dark Ages, and then the Renaissance, and then
I don't know. pretty sure you're right on that one. Anywho, I've only got a few more pages of notes. All right, let me get through this. Okay, like I've been talking about these legends and stuff like that, and it's weird that these ancient ass people seem to know more than our sciencey people today.
Yeah, well, something happened in the Dark Ages, like I said. Like we just like we lost our philosophical nature.
Yeah. Of course, myths and legends aren't evidence or proof that this is all, this is fact.
Yeah, like where's their evidence?
Right. We all, as curious people, we need hard facts, right?
Right.
7th of March, 1971. There's a cloud of water that just randomly appears on the moon. Like a true cloud. It was there for 14 hours.
Wow.
All right? Really think about that for a second. The moon doesn't have an atmosphere. How the hell does it have a cloud?
Well, I mean, it controls the weather. How does it control
ours.
the weather?
I cannot give you an accurate answer. I just know because of notes that that's what it does, and that's what science says. And this is mainstream science, so it's fully accepted across the board. I don't have a good answer for that one. I will start studying the moon and the climate and the weird shit for you.
So you can update us on this.
Yeah, our whole 3 listeners, yes. Yeah.
As in me, and your friend.
I have 2 people that listen occasionally. Now, over the past 100 years-ish, that, since we started figuring all this shit out about the moon, there have been 6 astronomers. I don't have their names.
Okay.
Okay, because some of them weren't American, so I was like, nope.
Not going to try to pronounce that.
Not going to try that. Nope. Especially that one guy that had a whole bunch more consonants than he had vowels. Okay. Yeah, nope, I'll pass. Anyway, studying the moon and some other things in space, they found out that there's a glowing mist in a crater. The same crater over 100 years-ish. Several people have pointed out the exact same spot on the moon having the exact same glowing weird mist.
Okay.
There's no explanation for this, and NASA refuses to even comment on it. Which, I mean, NASA is trying to hide a bunch of shit, so.
Currently.
Yeah. Here's a weird phenomenon that happens on Earth and is explainable on Earth, not so explainable if you in outer space.
Okay.
Okay. Have you ever heard about the walking stones in, like, the Salt Lake area? Or a salt bed, for that matter?
I think so.
So, the phenomenon on Earth is that it looks mysterious because it looks like somebody's been pushing boulders across salt beds, the salt flats, and they have tracks in the sand, and it's really creepy if you aren't aware of what's going on. What it is that it gets so cold in the desert at night that ice forms, and then as ice is formed, like melting the next morning, it's got a nice layer of water underneath it, and the wind's blowing hard enough across there that it's pushing these boulders. When the water evaporates, because it's hot as fuck in the desert, you now have tracks in the sand. Okay? So it's cool.
It is cool.
It's weird, but it's cool. This happens on the moon.
Okay.
But there's no wind on the moon.
That's weird.
Yeah. And not technically any reason that there should be like a heat up and cool off area either.
I mean, it does get hit by the sun. It reflects the sun. So it does get warm there, right? From the sun?
I mean,
I'm presuming on one side?
Yes and no. There's
really freezing cold temperatures on the other side, and then vice versa.
But there's no greenhouse effect to give you that climate change we're just talking about in the desert.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was saying. This isn't like pitch black where one side of the moon is melting hot and the other side's freezing cold, and then it swaps. It's not. The moon orbits in an interesting way.
Okay.
So that's not quite as weird. The other weird aspect
is it on an axis like the Earth too?
Um, I believe so.
Yeah, so it would probably orbit
It
like we
should
do,
have a
like
wobbling
this.
orbit
Yeah.
like Earth does, but it matches the Earth. The same face of the moon is always facing us.
Okay.
That's why we have the dark side of the moon. Yeah. Another interesting thing about the boulders, though, the random boulder tracks on the moon, they go uphill.
That's weird.
That's weird.
That's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now it doesn't seem that explainable.
No, no. This one's fun for all of our alien enthusiasts. There have been strange lights recorded around the moon since about 1540.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Before there were lights.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And NASA actually started recording to keep track of this weird phenomenon. About 570 lights have appeared
Wow.
and disappeared around the moon, or on the surface. That's what's even creepier. And creepier yet, if you look close enough, it's still happening. You can look with your telescope on like standard commercial telescope, not a powerful one.
Okay.
This one's kind of interesting. In 1992, there's been a blue light on the moon that they just call the blue gem, and this is another one. It happens so regularly that you could see it with a normal telescope. Like you just go buy one from Walmart and you can see it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get the kids a telescope. I
I
just
do
don't think
too.
they're ready for that yet. I
No,
had one when I was a kid. I loved
so did I. And I watched my very first eclipse with it.
it. We didn't
And
have a lot of stars anywhere I ever lived, so it was kind of disappointing, but I still liked
oh,
it.
I lived out in the country, so
Yeah.
yeah. This one bugs me because NASA won't explain it. They won't investigate it. They won't talk about it at all. There are some very strange structures on the moon that don't even remotely look like they were made by natural occurrences. Like, several towers that are more than just a few miles tall.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. There's pyramids on the moon.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And there's very symmetrical figures, all of which have been photographed from many, many different
Is
sources.
this where the man in the moon comes from?
I'm not entirely sure where
Because
the
that
man
was
in the
like,
moon
yeah.
thing came from.
I mean, that's an old children's story.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the movie The Guardians? Or is that it? Not the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Guardians? Is that what it's called? I think with Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the Sandman, and then they called him Pitch, but he
Yeah,
was basically the boogeyman.
yeah, but I don't know. I know
And
what
then
movie you're
Jack
talking about.
Frost.
Yeah, I know what movie you're talking about, but I don't know if that was called The Guardians. But yeah,
But basically, the man in the moon
yeah, because Hugh
is
Jackman
who.
played the freaking Easter Bunny.
Yeah, it was called the Guardians because the man in the moon picked Jack Frost. Each of the Guardians, he picked them,
Mm-hmm.
and the man in the moon talked to them, but it wasn't like talking,
Yeah, it was.
like telepathic.
Yeah,
I just feel like this is kind of like hinted at in children's stories. That's where I was getting.
That's a good conspiracy theory. Yeah, hey, we've been telling you it all along. Anyway,
Okay.
so this guy, Sergeant Carl Wolf, is an Air Force tech. I know I just threw this out there, but there's a reason I'm telling you about who this guy is. Okay, Sergeant Carl Wolf is an Air Force technician who works on the equipment that actually takes pictures of the surface of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he has images that show these structures. What he is quoted as describing it as is a full operational military base on the moon.
Okay.
And it's corroborated by several other people that that's exactly what this looks like.
Well, the towers and the pyramids make a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
Well,
But
maybe not
no,
pyramids. I
but
don't
like there's
understand.
domes.
Yeah.
No, there's like domes and there's like roads cut out on the dark side of the moon and there's like weird structural shapes that shouldn't be there if there isn't someone making them.
So the side of the moon that we can't see from telescopes.
Yeah, yeah. The dark side of the moon is like observed, but not by us. like NASA and other space areas are looking at shit like that. What makes him a little more credible, though, this Sergeant Wolf, is he's not a UFO junkie. He's not someone who you really question because of how enthusiastic they get over weird alien technology possibilities. Mm-hmm. When he brought this out and like discusses it in a couple different interviews, he explains that he was just really excited for NASA to explain it on the news. Like, hey, what are these structures? But oddly enough, NASA never broadcasted these pictures. Ever. The only reason they can be found is because in a very, very early pre-recording of by NASA of like what they found on the moon, they have these images in there. That's the only reason anybody has a copy of these images. So we know they're there, but nobody's telling us what the fuck they are.
Because they don't want us to know.
Mm-hmm. Another strange coinky dink that comes up when you talk about weird stuff about the moon is if you look at the interviews with the Apollo astronauts, someone who's just made a mark in history, like a phenomenal, huge step in history, should be excited and, like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to tell you about everything I experienced, blah, 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 blah. They're not. At all. They actually, matter of fact, seem scared to talk about anything they experienced. They're very solemn. They're very quiet. They wait for a question before they short answer response. It's not normal. Like, I mean, even if you think about a sports player, they get asked about the dumbest shit in their lives, and they're excited to tell you about everything.
Oh, yeah.
So if something as small as don't get me wrong, for all my sports fanatics and stuff like that, yes, sports are fine. They are history in the making, so to speak. However, going to the moon should be a big freaking ordeal, and these people aren't talking about it.
Yeah.
Not with any form of enthusiasm.
And I feel like that's why, like, the public doesn't really care about space travel anymore. Other than some do. When it came up with these billionaires racing to space.
Here's the thing, though. It does make you wonder why, if we're talking 60s and 70s, we went to outer space. Whether we landed on the moon or not, debatable. All of this happened in the 60s, 70s. We went to outer space.
Right.
Why have we not went back?
Right.
What happened? Did they find something up there? Maybe something to do with these ancient cultures that we just brought up. Who knew? Even harder question to come by is, why did these ancient civilizations on Earth know more about the moon and fucking everything than we do today with significantly, quote unquote, better technology than they did then? Because there's questions about that too. But how about, I told you that in the beginning, all these other theories have like, it doesn't really fit because of this, that, and the other. Well, how about let's talk about why the moon is a hollow spaceship does work for science fact versus science fiction. Okay. The formation of the moon, for the theory that the moon is hollow and it's a spaceship, tack 1. It's all good. That theory adds up and it explains it. Science can't. Science cannot explain the existence of the moon. The density, like the giant impact theory, it's backwards.
Right. We talked about how it's less dense on the inside.
Well, if it's a freaking giant spaceship, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
How it eclipses, like I said, it's not perfect, but it's pretty damn close. Well, like I said, the moon is moving away, so that's okay. We'll give it to the science. But if it's a spaceship and aliens are starting to come to Earth, they don't need the fucking moon anymore. Maybe it's moving away on purpose. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be a good thing because we won't have any climate.
They're right. Well, hey, everybody's worried about climate change. Well, to be fair, we have been having more extreme weather in like the past 20 years than we've ever had.
Yes.
The moon going away makes that happen. Just throwing it out there. Another tack on the board, the ringing. If it were a spaceship and it were hollow, it would ring like a bell.
Yes, because it's massive.
Yeah. Now, science is going to argue, well, it's not actually hollow because we were able to measure. There's just like less dense spots in some areas, more dense spots in others. Okay, that's fair. But what's in the center of the moon? We obviously have no idea.
Right.
Like on Earth, we have calculated and done all kinds of sciencey experiments and all this stuff and have it basically down to a scientific fact that the center of the Earth is molten iron core.
Right.
Which is also why we have magnetic poles.
Yes.
Because iron is super magnetic. What the hell's in the moon? What makes the moon the moon?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. So another board for the for the theory here. Another one is like the lights, the structures. If these lights are impacts or falling stars, or maybe even just reflective rocks, like you were just talking about, or a little bit ago, okay, maybe. What about these structures?
Yeah, what are up with the fucking pyramids and towers and domes and shit? Because that's creepy.
Well, like scientists and NASA are going to be like, oh, they're just strange shadows. What about the face on the moon? That one, I want answers. I want answers because they will not go back and investigate it at all.
Okay, what are we talking about? The face on the moon?
So I don't remember exactly when, but there was a image released to the public from the lunar module thing, like the stupid little robot that goes across the moon and takes pictures of the moon's surface and Mars' surface and everything else. There's a face. There was a face in the image, and people are bringing it up to that your brain instantly looks for patterns where there isn't actually patterns, and NASA's like, yeah, it's just shadows that happen to look like a face. It's fine, don't worry about it. But that image is pretty damn blurry. So the public started asking for better photos. Go back, look at it. What the hell is it? They're not doing it. They will not go back and take pictures of this thing. They're like, oh, we've already investigated. We don't need to look. Bless you.
Thank you. But there also are pictures of the man in the moon face theory.
Yeah.
Basically they're saying the lunar tides make it look like there's a face on the moon.
Yeah.
The different lunar seas make up the man in the moon's face.
Okay. I mean, there's also the theory that the moon's made of cheese.
The seas of serenity and rain are his eyes, and the sea of clouds forms his mouth. Okay. And the seas of islands and vapors make up his nose.
Still curious, though, how do we have vapors and clouds and stuff in a non-atmospheric location? Anyway.
There's also that, too.
Yeah. Oh, there's literally a man, if you draw that up.
Yeah.
Well, a person, a being, shape. Anyway, another big issue that we continue to run into when we investigate all this stuff and have questions about the moon, about other planets, it's the government agencies that, all them 3-letter agencies out there
don't want to
give answers. Everything. They don't want to give us all of the answers. It's either redacted or classified to the point where, like, even the top brass are like, why?
Yeah. Everything is kind of kept under wraps, and the public is left with questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's starting to feel like with the age of the internet that everything's kind of coming to light.
I mean,
slowly.
Yes, absolutely. But the big issue is, like, the Freedom of Information Act. We still don't have everything we've ever requested.
Yeah.
We can put in Freedom of Information Act over and over and over again. They still won't release everything.
Yeah, they won't. We still don't know everything about, like, situations involving Marilyn Monroe, JFK.
Yeah. Well, think of Roswell.
Bobby Kennedy, Roswell. There's a lot. The list goes. Yeah. Cults. that they have investigated. The list goes on for days.
Okay, ignoring all of the murders and conspiracies of peoples on the alien tract, okay, they openly admitted that aliens are real. However, all that information had to be agreed to be released by the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Why the hell does the Pentagon outdo Congress?
Outdo the people.
The people,
like,
yeah.
This is that's what the Pentagon and all of them are there for. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
I believe
not
it's to
so.
it's all, they say it's all to prevent pandemonium, but like I feel like we're on like our 10th end of the world saga.
People have been
like,
talking about the end of the world ending.
Can we just get it over already and just tell us about the lizard people and the underground societies and the fact that we got all our technology from aliens? Tell us about the fucking societies in the fucking mountains and the national parks eating people.
Have you
just
ever
tell us.
Have you ever heard of the Superstition Mountains?
Huh?
Have you ever heard of the Superstition Mountains?
Mm-mm.
Gonna have to do an episode because there's some really interesting stuff that pertains to lizard people.
Tell us the truth about the magic and the ghosts. Like, we all know the shit's real now.
Yeah.
Just be fucking honest. Like,
well,
again, like I said, halfway through this, isn't it about time that we just all made up and be friends and just share all the information? That's what TikTok's doing. That's why they don't like it.
As long as there is a government power, okay, I'm not a full anarchy kind of person. Do not get this misconstrued. As long as there is a governing power that freaking gets too much damn control over those people, this will always be the case.
Okay. How do we fix it, though? Because we have to have some governing power, laws, and things like that.
Yeah. I agree.
Because otherwise, fucking stupid people do what stupid people do. I mean, I was just saying at work, we need to take the warning labels off of shit and just let it ride, man.
Seriously. Hey, I fully believe in Darwinism.
However, my dumbass, I'm just going to say, I think we've talked about this before in a previous episode of me and my coworker made a mustard gas bomb unknowingly at work.
Yep.
Like, so warning labels.
So about that warning label, yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it says anywhere on a bottle of bleach should not mix it with pee, okay?
Ammonia.
Well,
it says do not mix with ammonia right on the label.
Yeah.
What do you think pee is?
Yeah, this is true. I'm not the one that did it, okay?
Yeah. it was well, y'all also used freaking
it was concentrate. I had nothing to do with any of it. I was assisting an individual at the time. It was a coworker that did it. I saw her grab the bleach, but I was assuming she was putting in a mop bucket with water.
Nope, they used full
No, she took straight up concentrated bleach and poured it into pee. And yeah.
Man. As far as your question of what to do about it, I'm not the person to ask. I'm not that smarticles. So,
me neither.
I mean, I do believe we should set up the way that the Constitution was founded. That the power is by the people. We just elect representatives of our people.
They need to get rid of this electoral college bullshit. And I don't know, there needs to be like a lot of reform. Just a lot.
Anyway, so how about that word of the day?
Instauration. Instauration.
Instauration?
Instauration.
Okay.
Restoration after decay, lapse or dilapidation. An act of instituting or establishing something. Once humanity dreamed of the great instauration, a rebirth of ancient wisdom that would compel us into a new age.
Hey, that's coinkadinkle.
We were just talking about that. Did you know?
Nope.
Instauration first appeared in the early 16th century, a product of the Latin verb instaurer, meaning to renew or restore. This same source gave us our verb store by way of Middle English and Anglo-French. After Instauration broke into English, the philosopher Francis Bacon began writing his Instauration Magna, which translates to the Great Instauration.
Too bad his name wasn't Christopher, so they could call him Chris P. Bacon.
This incompleted collection of works, which was written in Latin, calls for a restoration to a state of paradise on earth, but one in which humankind is enlightened by knowledge and truth.
Oh,
we were just talking about that.
That is like the perfect word for this week. That's cool. I didn't do that on purpose, I swear.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is cool. So, tell them where they can find us, babe.
Well, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, maybe. Twitter, no. TikTok, well,
sometimes.
We got to get it caught up.
YouTube.
We're getting there. But I do have the YouTube up. I'm up to date on it, or trying to be. And I think that's all the social media platforms.
You can find us on any podcast.
Yeah,
platform.
We are on every podcast.
And we're under This and That with Me and You.
Right. And if we're not on every single one of them, somebody should let us know so I can figure out which one's missing so I can put it on there.
Okay.
Okay. So to do that, you need to email us at tatwmay1@gmail.com.
That's tatwmay1@gmail.com.
Yep.
So
now,
yeah.
Make sure you do all them social media things, the like, the comment, the share, the subscribe, the whatever, all of them.
Follow.
Yep.
Whatever.
Do all of the social media things, because apparently that's the only way we get out there.
You can do a little comment on the podcast if you're listening from Amazon, where you rate us with stars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that helps us too.
That does. Yep. Ratings and all that good stuff. It's the only way we get out there.
Yeah. And so if you like us, know,
it'd be nice.
If you want your friends to like us, you make us more popular.
Friends, foes, and fams. Yep.
Anyway, you have a nice night, day, time.
Just have a day. Yeah. Have a day. All right, guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I love you.